Hot mic.
Make yourself comfortable.
I am. Look at this.
Here in the at the offices of Wheelhouse Creative.
Mm-hmm.
And finally.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
You wanted to rent me one of these modules.
We have a module in the back we're trying to rent.
Oh, you still are?
Yeah.
Go ahead, do your ad.
Are we? Have we started the official podcast?
After the ad.
Oh.
You could do an ad for it. You're a very, very centrally located spot here on West 19th Street in New York City's Chelsea neighborhood.
Yeah, we have a back room available. That's a great editing space.
Right.
And it's a small little room.
Is it about this size or is it even smaller?
Yeah, it's this size. I'll show it to you after. It's pretty...
So I'd say this is about 8 by 8,
mm-hmm.
something like that, maybe? Mm-hmm. So it's nice.
Yeah, it's nice. Beautiful.
Great views.
Great views, top floor.
Do you have a window in that one?
Space.
I'm kidding around, but you don't have a window in that? In the other
we
room?
do.
Oh, in the room you're renting?
Yeah.
Has a window?
Yeah.
Oh.
Amazing.
And what are you asking?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it's
off
nice...
mic.
Yeah, it's a nice space for people who are in film, and there's a lot of creative people here, and there's communal tables and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. It's an office space. It's
nice.
Like a lofty environment, but it's small.
You bet.
Modest, I should say. It's nice, but it's nice. So we're talking today. Well, we could talk about a couple of things. One is, of course, we could talk about The World Before Your Feet, which is your new film, your new documentary, which just had its world premiere, I should say. I'm sorry, what am I saying? Your New York City premiere at Doc NYC.
You're almost
I have to
getting
shake
it, right?
the screws out of my head.
Yeah,
I'm
we really
sorry.
do.
I know all these things.
Right.
Because I was at your world premiere.
Yeah, you were at my world premiere, which
South
was
by
at
Southwest.
South by, yeah. But we just had our New York City premiere at Doc NYC.
Right. And
now
now as we speak, we're actually gearing up toward the theatrical.
we are. The plane's about to land in
That's
New York
amazing.
City. It's
Right.
the movie's come home to roost.
Right in time for Thanksgiving.
It's opening on November 21st
The day
at the
before
Quad
Thanksgiving.
Cinema.
Isn't that the day before Thanksgiving?
It is.
So it's opening at the Quad on a Wednesday. They're taking a film forum approach to open a film. But it's not unusual for a holiday weekend for a film to open on a Wednesday anyway.
Yeah, we were real excited to get the Thanksgiving weekend. We were originally booked
were.
at the Quad this week.
Okay.
And then it opened up that we could get Thanksgiving, and we all thought that was a
Better.
an
I
exciting
think so.
proposition.
You have a
because,
longer weekend for a film like this.
This movie's very sort of, it's got a little bit of a feel-good kind of,
Oh, definitely.
sort of vibe. So
Yeah.
it worked. It makes sense to be at the Quad.
Right.
And the Quad's amazing. I mean, I'm sure your listeners have been there. The new rebooted, redone Quad is just one of the best theaters in the city, it seems.
Yeah. And that's, and it's your neighbor practically.
Yeah, I mean, we're right now recording this on 19th Street, and it's
Just
on
blocks away.
13th Street, so
Yeah.
it's right down the street, same subway. And we're also up at the New Art in Los Angeles on Friday, November 23rd.
Okay. So the Friday of the it's opening on a Friday of Thanksgiving weekend.
It is. Okay. So in LA, it's
So
opening
are
on
you
that
gonna,
Friday.
Are you going to eat Thursday and then head out to LA?
I am going to. We have the subject, Matt Green, our producer, executive producer, Jesse Eisenberg, and me doing Q&A in New York City. And then I'm going to run out to Los Angeles on Friday. And Jesse and Matt are going to stay here in New York to do Q&As.
Is it just at the Quad? So you're doing it again on Friday?
Yeah, they'll
and you
be
couldn't
doing...
fit in Jesse Eisenberg for the podcast. I
Jesse
find that
Eisenberg right
really
now,
hard.
he's in Prague finishing up a really exciting movie that's
I'm
going to
talking
be...
about today.
Today, yeah.
next week.
He's in Prague and he's flying back for our release on Monday or Sunday or something.
Mm-hmm. So there was time.
There probably was not.
I beg to differ. I mean, just this week alone, Edie Falco and Jeffrey Wright. So you could have.
Man, yeah, you're killing it.
There was room for one more celebrity.
This is I need to step up my game.
Yeah,
I really do.
That's right. But this is your fifth or sixth time on this podcast.
I am a regular.
I've lost count, but
I've achieved regular status. Haven't I?
Part of the inner circle of guests. But the thing is, what is notable is this is the first time you've appeared alone.
I think you're right. I seem to always be with a group or
just somebody else.
leading an entourage onto your podcast.
Well, yeah, there were two entourage times, but one was with your dad, and one was the last time was with Matt Green, the subject of The World Before Your Feet.
Yeah, the first time I was on the podcast was was a neat moment for me.
Yeah.
Because I was on with my father, and my father's a filmmaker. His name's Chuck Workman. And when we first went on, we both had a documentary coming out in theaters at the same time. It was pretty crazy. He had one called Magician, which was a documentary that he did on Orson Welles.
Right. Which is, started.
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of this kind of Orson Welles, re-hysteria, I guess you would call it. And it was just a few years ago, but, 3 years ago or whatever. And I had a documentary, my last film, which was called Magical Universe. Right. Which is this odd movie about an outsider artist, an elderly artist, and my friendship with him. Mm-hmm. And that was being released by IFC Films. Mm-hmm. And there was this sort of funny moment where we were doing press together, and including your podcast, which we did together and goofed off. Because we literally both had a movie open either the same day, or like mine opened on Friday and his opened on Wednesday, or something like that. Yeah, it was very unusual. I don't know... I don't know if there's a precedent for that. But it was pretty cool.
You didn't do any other press together?
We have done press together, but not quite like yours, where it was just the two of us both on a podcast side by side.
And I also remember splitting up the show because intentionally, in a matter of fact, because we had like an hour, and I intentionally focused half of it on your dad's film and half of it on yours, though there was overlap.
That's right.
And then I split it into two. I might have even split it into two segments.
Yeah, I forgot what you did, but it was definitely very cool, and it was a fun time for us because obviously it's you're doing something with your father. That's cool, but it was also just kind of cool for us to do it together. And we both had a movie coming out, and his was called Magician, and mine's called Magical Universe, so they even sound alike.
Yeah.
So it was a cool moment. It was
weird.
Yeah.
I was trying to pull up the episode numbers, but I can do it in the show note description.
Cool.
But so people can go back and listen.
I've been on for other stuff. I've been on with you.
Yep.
For other films that I've done.
Well, there's the collection of shorts, New York's
True New York. I sort of produced a sort of compilation film called True New York. So we were on for that. We had a lot of great filmmakers involved in that.
And that was done in studio at the time.
That was cool.
And that was a lot of fun.
And then we did a big episode where we talked about the films of Paul Schrader.
That was a big episode. Very ambitious.
Yes, it was.
And we were all like, it was very freewheeling. And that was great because that I have a sense helped me get Paul Schrader onto the show.
Nice. Yeah, I think
Unless you pulled strings and you're not telling me.
Well, I didn't pull strings, but here's what I did do. So Paul Schrader, we did this incredible episode.
You're a Schrader whisperer.
Yeah, I was. We did this amazing episode where leading up to First Reformed, we all talked about Paul Schrader's films.
Right.
And even though I'm making weird documentaries, I'm definitely also a little bit of a film, a supreme film geek. So I know my Paul Schrader movies. And we did this cool episode where a few of us talked about it, including James Hancock.
Right. Yeah.
From Wrong Reel.
Right.
And Chico Leo.
That's right.
And
Robert
we did this cool episode where we...
Who was the last guy?
Chico Leo. And I think that was it. It was the four of us.
Okay. It was just the four of us.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
And so we did that episode on Paul Schrader. And then a little while after, I saw Paul Schrader at a film festival. And I talked to him about that podcast. And then I think maybe it, helped.
Who knows?
Yeah,
it could have just been A24.
Yeah, sure.
But also I did meet him myself.
That's awesome.
Before that at a talk he was doing with Annette Insdorf, your former teacher.
Who I'm going to speak at the JCC and show The World Before Your Feet next week.
At their sort of retrofitted Lincoln Plaza thing they're trying to do.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure. That she asked us to come and show The World Before Your Feet at the JCC,
right,
up on the Upper West Side.
And Matt Cohen, Speakeasy.
I'm doing that too. Yeah.
You just don't say no.
I just don't say no.
Why would you?
Exactly.
It's a small film.
Put it out,
and
you got to get. It is a small film, and we're trying to sort of get the word out. It's a really neat film, and the subject is really interesting, and the themes in the movie are really interesting. So we're trying to do our best.
It probably would have made sense to talk about the theme prior to plugging all the screenings. But let's
sure.
just for a moment. Let's for a moment reconfigure, and then come back to those other one-offs, because those folks are also, people I know and like, and I'd like to plug that, even though the quad is important. So Matt, we can go back to, we didn't quite get to the last of the visits.
No,
the one with Matt, which we did in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest earlier this year. But we had Matt on, who is the subject of the documentary, and whose goal provides the structure or the central idea of the film, which is that it's his goal to walk every block, every street of New York City, which, there are thousands and thousands of miles of.
Exactly.
Of course, in the greater scheme of things, there's much more going on, and also just on a practical level, he's also become a New York City
expert.
Yeah. Expert.
Encyclopedia.
He's an encyclopedia of information about all these neighborhoods that comprise New York, of which there are hundreds, and then even maybe broader than that in terms of personal aspects to who this guy is comes up in the film.
Yeah, so Matt is 37, and he's been a longtime friend of mine. I've known him for many years, predating us even thinking about doing a documentary, right? So, sorry, he decided that it would be his mission to walk every single street of New York City, and that's all 5 boroughs. And if you added it up, it's probably about 9,000 miles. So he also does every path, every park, every cemetery, every coastline. If it's a public path and you could walk it, Matt walks it. And through the course of doing this, it was his mission. He wanted to do this. He lives off about $10 to $15 a day. He sold basically most of his possessions. He gave up his apartment. And he decided that this is what he would do as a way to better understand his city and better understand the world around him. Mm-hmm. And he's been doing it now. He's on his 7th year. Mm-hmm. And I filmed him and followed him for over 3 years, almost 4 years. And was sort of kind of, I would go with him and walk with him and kind of embed with him as he just walked the streets. And that's what The World Before Your Feet, that's what it is. It's a documentary about Matt and this mission to walk every street of New York City. Through the course of his walk, we not only see, New York in a way that, you don't really see in a lot of movies, maybe in any movie, because we're in so many neighborhoods and so many places that don't usually get cameras. But you also sort of get a sense of like sort of the history and the wonder of New York City that maybe, sometimes is mundane, but also is sometimes like amazing. The thing that Matt does that's really interesting beyond just walking, as he walks, he notices things and he sees things, and he sometimes often takes photos of them with his dumb little cell phone camera. He's got a blog, which is imjustwalkin.com, but it's certainly not some popular website. I mean, somebody even in the film says that he gets like maybe 12 hits a day. But what he does is anything that interests him, he does incredible amounts of research on it. And it could be something really small and mundane, like a fire hydrant or a manhole cover or a street sign. But it could also be like huge things like Carnegie Hall or Stonewall or, where Ebbets Field was, or any of these sort of like landmark places in New York City. And as a result of this project, this 37-year-old guy who essentially is homeless and jobless sort of knows more about New York City than... I think anyone on the planet, and a lot of people, I think, would agree with me. So it's really remarkable. It's a remarkable sort of story about this one guy with this crazy obsession, but how it's sort of transformed into something really deep and interesting. And that's what that's basically the film,
Yeah.
You saw it? Did you see it at South by?
Well, I think I saw it probably
before
that.
Yeah.
I think what happened was that I wasn't able to go to the screening at South by. I think I was there.
Yeah.
I was there, obviously, but I don't think I think I had a
couldn't
conflict.
Get a ticket.
That was the problem. It's always the issue.
So after South by, we then were acquired by a great distributor, this new distributor, Greenwich Entertainment. What
is it called?
Greenwich Entertainment.
Oh, Greenwich.
Yeah, they're great. They launched this year at Sundance, and there's been some great documentaries and other films that they've been distributing this year, like the Itzhak Perlman documentary, Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood. That was their movie. They're doing all the theatrical on Free Solo, so they're very, very involved in that film as well. That cool documentary on Gary Winogrand.
I had that. I had that filmmaker on.
Yeah, she's cool.
She premiered at South by too.
Yeah, she did. She's very cool. And
Sasha.
Yep. And she's like a teacher and does documentaries sort of amid all that. And then they took us on, and now we're releasing now. So we're pumped. We're super psyched.
And Matt is obviously doing the press with you and has been traveling. Did he go to a lot of festivals?
Yeah, he went to a lot of festivals. And Matt, you've met Matt, and he's a very interesting, unique guy.
We were on the Lighthouse. We were at the Lighthouse at the Long Beach Island together. We shared a house.
Exactly, and he really kind of walks the walk. No pun intended. He
sure that wasn't
that was intended. Yeah, that pun intended. He, he really lives off $10-15 a day. He doesn't have like a lot of possessions, so we run into situations all the time, like where we're doing something and he doesn't have nice pants, or we're doing something and he can't get there because he doesn't have the money to get there. But what we've done at film festivals that's been really amazing is we do the screening and then Matt leads these public walks.
Right.
And they could be anywhere, and it doesn't matter if he knows the city or not. It's not really sort of about that. It's about...
Right. He must have acquired a skill, of being able to kind of improvise.
Yeah, it's about...
And I don't mean that...
It's not something that anyone can't do. The difference between, I'd say, what Matt does and, like, what the guy in Free Solo does is, like, Matt's doing something that anyone could do.
What's Free Solo? I know, keep hearing about it.
Yeah, Free Solo is the documentary about... this guy who climbs up El Capitan and Yosemite without ropes. Okay, so he's this remarkable character doing a death-defying act.
Right.
Well, Matt's also really remarkable, but he's doing something that's totally anyone could do. All he does is walk around.
Yeah.
So it's not something that anyone can't do.
Right. I mean, I guess he could get run over.
I guess there's some, inherent dangers, but anyone
get mugged.
Yeah, but he doesn't.
Right.
A lot of people ask, hey, were you ever mugged on this walk? And he hasn't.
Yeah, there's not much mugging going on these days anyway.
New York's pretty safe.
Yeah.
So
especially when you have a film crew following you.
Yeah, and wait a second, film crew. It was
me. I know, it's
me.
just you.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, that was sort of part of the little the way that Matt and I figured out how to do this.
To do this where it wouldn't be intrusive in terms of his being able to do the walk without drawing attention to himself.
He didn't want... When I first approached him about, hey, why don't I come with a camera? It was kind of very much against what he's about. He's really not a guy who's interested in
attention like that.
Self-promotion. He doesn't need a documentary on him. He's not trying to become famous. It's not what he's about. Mm-hmm. So
and when this is over, this theatrical and
who knows what's going to happen. But I said to him, so he was concerned that it would sort of change the spontaneity of what he was doing and impact what he was doing if there was a camera behind him. Mm-hmm. So I sort of said, well, here, I'll make a little deal with you. It'll just be me, and I'll have a camera, and I'll sort of follow along with you and kind of walk behind you, and there won't be a crew, there won't be a sound person, there won't be a PA.
Because he was loud.
I just put a lav on him.
Right.
And I just sort of let him go. And he would say, okay, well, we're going to go walk in East Queens today. Or we're going to be somewhere in the Bronx today.
He would just give you
there'd be a meeting
location.
Point. Yeah. He'd say, okay, I'll meet you at 7 a.m. and we're going to be in this area of Staten Island. And I'd say, okay, cool, I'll see you there. And I would show up and I would put a lav on him and he would just walk. And we would go... Usually on the days I was shooting, we'd go 10 miles or so. Mm-hmm. And he would go do his thing, walk around, take photos, notice street signs.
Yeah.
Pick up things off the road, talk to a lot of people. That's part of what he does, is just kind of...
But then more people were interested because, there was somebody with a camera following.
And without a doubt, it's that classic thing that, you have a camera and it suddenly changes the dynamic. Well, sure. But, given that, I think we sort of kept a low profile,
Sure.
And I think what was also really interesting was these are a lot of neighborhoods. Like, everybody knows New York in the media. Everybody on in planet Earth. But they know Times Square. They know all these places that they see in movies, or the sort of the Sex and the City version of New York City, or the Wall Street version of New York City. But we're in these areas that don't get cameras. Deep Queens,
deep
Brooklyn,
which could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in New York. It doesn't necessarily. Those people are, New York City people that just live in a city. That it could be almost any city.
Any city, any city, Earth.
Right.
And I think that's what was really interesting, was that I would kind of be following along with him with the camera, and people would be excited because there's like, oh my God, there's a camera here.
Right. Yeah. It's funny, right? They're the closest. They live within maybe a half hour from the center of the media and entertainment, but...
Yes. Try going to, Queens Village. Try going to Queens Village or something. Really deep Queens in the East Queens, or, around there, Alley Pond Park area. And, there's not a lot of cameras popping in there.
Yeah.
So we kind of worked out this situation where I would just kind of follow him and shoot. And usually when I shot him, it was like I said, I'd go about 7 to 10 miles, a few hours. And then I would get so tired because I was also carrying equipment.
Oh, right.
And he was walking, and he wasn't...
In shorts and a pencil.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a pad and a pencil. And nuts. Peanuts or whatever he's eating.
His snack.
His snack. And that's it. And he also wasn't really waiting for me. It wasn't like he was performing for the camera. He would just go do his thing.
Right. And each day you didn't really know what you were going to encounter because there was no...
So it's that sort of perfect sort of verite spontaneity thing where a guy's just walking around and there's a camera kind of behind him, and whatever happens.
Well, so that's the film, and you do get to hear from also some of the people that know Matt. That's one other component of the film. It's not just the walks and some of the interactions that happen during those walks when you're following, but it's also there are some interviews that you do with some of his family and friends that know him over the years. And you get a little bit more of a window into who this guy is and what might be motivating him. But you really never get a clear answer to what,
Yeah, I mean, there's not, for him, I don't think there's some sort of like rosebud that explains it all, Yeah. It's just like, oh, this is why he does it.
There's another Orson Welles reference, by the way, for those who aren't.
Which all your listeners will get. But, I think it's more like there's a number of things, and the movie does kind of dive into a lot of those. Like, I talked to a couple ex-girlfriends, I talked to his family, I talked to his brother, and you start seeing a lot of small things that may have, all together kind of created a lot of motivation for him to want to live a different kind of life, and it's a life about embracing the small things and seeing the world in this kind of unique way. And, there's traces of, if you want to be pretentious, there's traces of like Thoreau, he's somebody who kind of decides that he didn't want to, Matt was a former engineer. He worked in a cubicle. He had a 9-to-5 job. He went to a great college. He had a great job, made some money.
Right.
And then he decided that really wasn't for him. So he decided that he was going to start pursuing these projects, these walking projects. And that's what he does. And it's all he does.
Projects, plural, because he had, we should mention, he also had walked across the country, correct? A couple of times.
So in 2010, he was an engineer at a good firm here in New York City. And he decided it wasn't for him. And he quit, and he did some research about could he walk across the country. And sure enough, if you Google it, there's some people that have walked across the country. And Matt decided at that point he was going to do it. And he figured it would take him a year. And he did it in 5 months. And it wasn't that he was like racing. He's not trying to win any races. He's not trying to get through anything faster than possible. He's not trying to break any records. Matt is not trying to, beat anybody else. All he wanted to do was walk across the country. And he did it by pushing this little cart. He took a baby stroller and he converted it like one of those jogger baby strollers, and he converted it into his little pack. Mm-hmm. And he walked across the country sort of on the northern route. And he was really struck, and this is in the movie, but he was really struck by the generosity of people and how he went to these places and people thought, that people would like stone him and, run him over with their cars. And it was like the opposite. He was embraced by everybody where he went. He walked and he would say, hey, can I stay at your, can I pitch a tent at your house? Mm-hmm. Can I take a shower? Do you have anything you could give me to eat? And the sort of the world opened up to him in this sort of like torrent of generosity.
Right, the world before his feet.
Yes.
Which is amazing. So he walked through like Wyoming or something like that?
Yep. He went from New York to Chicago, and then Chicago.
Do you know what
Oregon.
time of year he went?
It was most of the year, but it was the first half of the year. So he avoided like the big winter though. Okay,
because by the time he got to real elevated area, it was already spring.
Yeah, it probably was, but there wasn't like big storms, But so he did that walk in 2010, and it was such an emotional thing for him, and it's such a huge thing for him that happened that he then came back to New York City, right, and realized that
in his private Learjet.
Yeah, on his Learjet. And he realized at that point that he came back to the city that he lived in and didn't really know his city. And even though he had lived in here for, much of his adult life. Mm-hmm. And at that point, he decides that he's going to do this walk of every street in New York City.
Right. Okay.
Which has been also attempted by another man who also has gotten some press, whose name is Bill Helmrich, and who's in my movie. Mm-hmm. And Bill has just walked the populated streets of New York. So he's done about 6,000 miles.
As opposed to the pathways and the coastline.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that, yeah.
Bill's done about 6,000 miles. Matt has done about 8,000 miles. And Bill's a neat guy too. He's written some books. He teaches at City College. And he's also somebody who just, spends his days walking, mostly through New York City.
It's November 13th or something. What am I saying? Right? Where is he walking? Matt walking these days?
Matt is still walking New York City. He's not done yet. He's about 90% done. It became very apparent to me that this was not going to be a documentary where he finishes.
Right. He crosses the finish line.
And that was mostly because of the length of his project, but also because it became very apparent to me that that's not what the movie was about. The movie was not going to be about completing the destination. Right. It's that classic journey versus destination thing. Right. So Matt is still walking
across the country is a lot more straightforward, actually,
exactly.
in that regard.
He will probably, when he's done, though, he will have walked 3 times the length of the country just in this single city.
Right.
I don't know when he's going to be finished because, as I mentioned before, he does tons of research. And the research side of it has almost like eclipsed.
Taken over.
Yeah.
Right.
And now the closer he gets to finishing, the longer everything takes. So he's, I don't know, he's like 2 years behind on his blog. Mm-hmm. Like I said, he's got a little blog. He posts photos. He does research. Mm-hmm. And he's about 2 years behind. So if you go to his blog, imjustwalkin.com.
No G?
No. Mm-hmm. There's stuff from 2016 on the front page because or maybe it's 2017 at this point, because he's so far behind. Mm-hmm. So I don't know when he's going to be done with New York City, but it's going to eventually be done. I mean, certainly audiences and Q&As and stuff, everybody loves to say like, you don't really want to finish, do you? But I think Matt does want to finish. It's just
but
he wants to
York,
complete it.
Right, but New York City won't finish in it because they're always modifying. The city is so big and sprawling that blocks do change, right? And
absolutely. And Matt then goes revisits them.
Right.
So it's like if a block, if something is added, Matt needs to go back to Flushing.
But
and
how does
Queens.
he know about it?
What's that?
How does he find out about that?
He's he's up on all this stuff. He goes on
certain sites. He
knows about the websites, and he keeps up on the streets that are opening and paths and parks.
Right. Yeah.
So it'll be like, oh, there's a new thing opened up in Mott Haven, Bronx, and next thing you know, he needs to race up there and get it and check it off.
He needs to race up there because
maybe he's not racing.
Because it's going to close or something if he doesn't get there in time.
Anyway, he's also very much that kind of left brainy, kind of anal, obsessive.
Well, you have to be. I mean, I think that's what compels you.
That he's checking everything off, but he's he's not some kooky character like you would see in the movie.
No. He's very typical. How does he? And you brought up the anal part of it, which does lead to, even for somebody who's not so anal, but he does have a system of how he keeps track. Because how would you do it otherwise? So what does that look like?
It's pretty analog. It's nothing fancy. I mean, and that's another thing. We've been asked at a lot of Q&As. Is he just
using a marker on a map?
Fancy GPS system? Are you using a special app?
And the Hagstrom maps?
It's not. It's basically just he basically does it by hand, and he looks at Google Maps, and I think there's some plug-in where you could create little paths, and that's what he does.
Okay.
And if you go on his website, you could actually see in red all the streets that he's walked, and you could zoom in, and it's like suddenly the entire city is covered with red because he's 90% done.
Right. So God bless the satellites.
Yeah. So I mean, there's certainly some parks and whatnot that are hard for him to track. Because, like a cemetery,
because they're not. Maybe Google Maps doesn't.
Yeah, Google doesn't do it, and there's not specific paths, and even Central Park. How do you prove that you've walked every path in Central Park?
Who's he proving it to?
He's not proving it to anyone by himself.
Right.
But it is.
Well, I guess there must be Central Park maps.
There are, but imagine a cemetery. There's a lot of people are.
A lot of them have maps.
Yeah, but people are really. I think one of the scenes that really blows away people in the documentary is there's the scene that takes place in cemeteries. I think it surprises people because they don't realize how many cemeteries are in New York City and how damn big they are.
Right,
they're huge, and there's this area called the Cemetery Belt
in Queens.
Yeah, it's on the border of Queens.
If you drive through the what's called the Jackie Robinson,
exactly,
it flanks.
Exactly. And so there's a number of cemeteries there.
Yeah, there's lots of them.
And they're all sort of
Jewish
adjacent to each other, and they're old ones, and there's ones
I've walked a lot through there because I would walk from Brownsville to where I live and it's a long walk, but I go by Google Maps, and I've done a little bit of this myself.
Nice.
I've done some really long walks where just to get out and get and clear my mind. And I've walked, along cemeteries. I had no idea.
There's so many cemeteries out there, and they all sort of blend into each other. And even to the point where we'd be filming, and I wouldn't know which cemetery I was in. I was like, okay, is this Machpelah? Is this Beth Olam? Is this Cypress Hills? Where am I? Because they all just sort of blend because there's so many.
Sure.
This New York City is. And this is what people forget. New York City is the most populated city in the United States by far. It's not even close.
You're referring to the dead people.
What? Yeah. The amount of people that are buried in New York City eclipses any city in the United States by far. Mm-hmm. And it's just, New York is just this sort of... Are you
saying more than, let's say, the Houston,
Yeah.
Fort Worth kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not even close. Oh. And that New York has this sort of bottomless, history. Mm-hmm. And somebody described it in the movie, New York, it's like every street's like a fossil wreck, has a fossil record. And it's really true. It's just this sort of endless history that you just sort of scrape. Mm-hmm. And those cemeteries are even more dramatic. So there is a scene in the movie where there's where Matt is walking a lot of cemeteries because it's part of what his walk. And not only do you see like all these incredible icons that are buried there, but it just also reminds you of just how deep it goes.
Right.
It's really wild.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a really neat part for me.
And I always felt like, I feel like cemeteries are our greatest indulgence, overindulgence. I mean, so much, all that little space that could be used for parks, and I mean, I don't know how you'd keep it up. If it were parks, I mean, I guess it could be forest.
Yeah,
I mean, it could be wild. It could be preserved. I mean, I just feel like
a couple
all
things
that cemetery space is just
okay. A couple
nuts.
things. One is one of the reasons why New York City cemeteries are so incredible to look at is because they're in places where it's hard to put residential housing. So often they're on hilly areas or they're on these sort of rocks and stones that make it difficult to put in buildings. But the other thing you mentioned about parks and them being parks. Greenwood Cemetery, which is the big cemetery in Brooklyn, at one point was I think it was the biggest leisure destination in the world at some point around the 1900s. And families would go there the way that people go to Central Park now. They would go to Greenwood Cemetery to spend their afternoons, their Sunday afternoons. And it was the most popular of any place. So you're like, you'd think like, oh, this is kind of,
people were buried.
Yeah,
there
but it's not. It's cemeteries have come a really sort of, have back in the day, they were not seen as these sort of places that were about death. They were seen as these places where you would celebrate life, and it's an odd sense.
I'm dubious about that.
It's true,
but I do know my son was when he was in middle school, they took a class trip there.
Greenwood's amazing. Yeah. Besides, seeing Basquiat's grave. There's also just the topography is amazing. The statues are amazing. So there's a lot of things like that in the documentary where like you think you knew New York, or you think you know New York, but we're about to subvert that a little bit. A lot of that is in the documentary. Because people also have these ideas of what neighborhoods are. They haven't even been to. A lot of people haven't even been to some of these neighborhoods, but they hear, East New York or Brownsville or South Bronx, and they have this idea of what those neighborhoods are. But when you're on street level and you're walking, they're actually amazing. And
and there's a whole. I mean, there are some areas of Brooklyn like this too, but at Queens and probably the Bronx, they have large swaths, large areas where they're not even accessible by subway. They're what we call two-fare zones, where you take the subway to the bus, and then the only way to get to certain neighborhoods is via bus or walking. So, I mean, people just... And then that what that does provide, of course, the people that live out there is a lot more quiet. Yeah,
especially Queens. That was a big revelation for me, was how deep Queens goes. A lot of the community that I know knows like Long Island City and knows Astoria, knows all the cool places. Yeah. But you start going deeper into Queens, and it's exactly as you said. You can't really... it's not subway accessible. So you have to sort of get to a point, and then you take buses. And, Queens Village and College Point and, around where Alley Pond Park is, they're really deep.
Right. I mean, you gotta have a car, or just if you're, or just relying on buses.
You know what it looks like? It looks like the rest of America.
Kind of. Yeah.
It doesn't look like what people imagine New York. It looks like America. It looks like what the suburbs
nicer
look
in
like.
some cases, because they're not like new developments. These terrible places. Yeah. I'm sorry if you're listening and you live in a development. Right. There are nice developments, but most of them are not so nice.
But so the documentary definitely hits in a lot of those neighborhoods. Staten Island is featured quite a bit. Right. How often are you in Staten Island?
Every time I go to New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I drive through Staten Island. I mean, a lot.
Okay.
Over the years.
Did you ever stop into Staten Island?
A few times.
It's pretty good.
And I've been to the Staten Island Zoo.
Staten Island Zoo's. I like it better than the Bronx Zoo. It's small.
It's tiny.
It's small and kind of has a cool
It's about
feel.
the size of the Brooklyn Museum. The Brooklyn Zoo.
Yeah, it's like the Prospect Park Zoo.
Yeah,
but
Prospect Park Zoo.
I like the Staten Island Zoo quite a bit, and all that kind of Snug Harbor stuff is great. And there's great food in Staten Island that a lot of people don't know about. There's a lot of neat stuff in Staten Island, and we did a lot of scenes there.
Right.
And Matt also was really deep in like these areas that are very far and that take a while to get to.
Yeah.
You know, out by the bridges, by Gothel's Bridge, and on the edge.
But yeah. Anyway, but I think the title in a way refers to like in what we were talking about before. It does feel in a way like the world is in these little neighborhoods. That this is the world. I'm not articulating it quite so well, but
that somehow, like, just by walking this one city.
Yeah,
the world sort of comes into focus.
It does, yeah.
And it has to do with a lot about the type of people. I mean, the movie is also about the kinds of... It's about people. And cities are... Matt even talks about it at one point in the movie, and it's in our trailer, if anybody clicks on the trailer, that a city is built by people. It's made by people. So it becomes about the people in a city. And, the people in New York City really do represent the entire world. There's hundreds of languages spoken in New York City.
Yeah, some of them are not even on record.
Yes, and
I'm joking, but it's probably true.
And you get a sense of the diversity in a way that I once made a joke to somebody that this is the most diverse movie in the history of mankind. And it was a joke, right? And then I was like, wait a second. It's probably in some ways true because we're in so many neighborhoods where Matt is just meeting people of different backgrounds. There's a whole sort of side to the movie of Matt meeting the people in New York City. And he's sort of like, as you pointed out, he's sort of like this human greeting card. And he gets along with everybody. So all these different people from different ethnicities and different, that look different, all sort of come out and sort of can find a commonality when they talk to him. And it's sort of amazing because you're just reminded at how diverse this city is.
Right.
And how it, by and large, how diverse America is. And, certainly it resonates with stuff today about immigration.
And anti-immigration.
Yeah. I mean, it's so diverse in New York City. It's so much about, and New York City is so much about.
This should be required watching for anybody who's...
I like that idea, Adam. Let's make it required watching.
For anybody who's has a phobia around immigrants and see how successful it works in its application.
Yeah, and you really get a sense that, at least what I was trying to sort of show, because I saw it with Matt. It wasn't anything that I had to, muscle. I saw it when I was out with Matt. But that people are all the same, and that everybody, we have this notion that people are different, and the media obviously is all very much about showing and talking about how people are different. But then when you realize, and you're kind of like in the trenches of just kind of going into all these places, you start realizing that everybody's there's a commonality. Everybody's really similar, and people are generally really generous and nice.
Right.
And I think that comes through too. At least that was one of the goals.
Yeah. Well, would you say there's maybe a running theme in your films around?
In all my films, or just this film?
No. In all your films,
I mean, all my films
throughout your film career, let's say.
So I've now done. I guess this is like my fourth feature, and I'm already now in the middle of production on my next film too. And pretty much all of them are about people who are living these sort of extreme lives. Some are more, family friendly than others, and some are people that you could invite to family dinner more than others. But they're all people that are living these very, very extreme lives. And they're all obsessive, and but it's more about all of them sort of have this sort of passion, and they don't really care about how the rest of the world sees them.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So my last film that we mentioned at the beginning was Magical Universe, my last documentary. That's about an artist who I met and kind of discovered, an elderly artist in Maine. And he had been spending his entire adult life making Barbie doll art in a attic in a house in Saco, Maine. And that's also about being an artist and being creative, but also being this sort of extreme obsessive who somehow found Barbie doll art, Barbie dolls, as a way for him to sort of understand the world.
Right.
And then I had done another film that we just actually did a book on as well, which is about it's called One Track Mind, which is about a guy in his 60s, 70s. He lives in New Jersey. And he has spent most of his free time as an adult drawing the decor and the designs of the New York City subway stations.
Yeah, right. Plug the book.
Yeah, so we had a book that came out this year, also called One Track Mind, that is about the artwork of this guy. His name's Phil Coppola. And, that some listeners might even have heard of this. He's
gotten some press.
Yeah, he got press. The book got press. The great author Jonathan Lethem wrote the foreword.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I'm certainly attracted to that. I'm not really interested in political documentaries. I know how important that is right now, but it's not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in documentaries as journalism. I'm not interested in trying to convince you of a position. Not interested in that. I'm interested in showing this kind of amazingness that a lot of people are capable of that maybe they don't, they're not trying to show to the world. And that's kind of...
Also, there's this drama and awe around the collection of small things that people get obsessed about. In a way, again, referring to your title of the new movie, The World Before Your Feet, it's also what I was trying to get at before is it's just the world is this huge, abundant thing, but it's really discovered through the average people that you come across. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I was trying to say.
It's like on a person level.
Yeah.
It's not on a grand
going
level.
to Times Square and waiting for that or something to, like to sort of materialize. It's through the walking through and it's the collection of it. It's the summation of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where the world is, you know?
Yeah.
And there's and looking at it cinematically, there's like, you can kind of get that point across if you're a good filmmaker, good storyteller,
it's
and
hard.
just get that awe across.
Yeah,
that's the hard part, right?
It's hard
the
because
challenge.
a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in doesn't necessarily have clear-cut stories. It's not about...
You have to discover it through
it's
the
not
making
about
of
like
it.
Finishing something or winning a contest.
Right.
This isn't Spellbound where they're trying to win the
8
spelling
days
bee.
until the big race.
Sport
days
or there's
until
the
race.
or we're trying to show you that this, about global warming. There's not the thrust in that those kind of projects have. So sometimes it is a little tricky to kind of figure out how to structure it. I'm doing a new movie, right, which is about Lily Hevesh, who's the world's greatest domino artist. Okay, dominoes as in dominoes toppling. Like if you've ever seen domino art on the internet, like on Reddit YouTube or Instagram, it's all pretty much this one girl who's 19 years old, dropped out of college, and her videos have been seen 1 billion times. And she's this lovely girl who lives in Massachusetts. She just dropped out of her freshman year in college, and she's now become the world's greatest, most acclaimed, most successful, most famous artist of domino toppling. So I'm now doing that. I'm doing a film on her now. And, it's kind of the same thing. It's not, she's not in a wheelchair. She's not, she doesn't have a life-threatening disease. She's not, it's not what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in showing, like, how awesome she is. Yeah. And how interesting it is that this, 19-year-old decided to do this and be the best that she could possibly be at it. the same way that Matt Green decided to walk every street of New York City and be the best that he could possibly be at that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what interests me mostly is that. And, like I said, it's sometimes tricky in the editing room, but that's kind of what I like.
Right. Well, I was going to bring that up, like just the sheer amount of footage you must have, but it's okay.
I mean,
and how you kind of catalog that.
Yeah, the bullet points is I had over 500 hours of Matt walking through New York,
right.
and
but you developed a method from the start about how you could maybe highlight what would fit into the structure of the film.
The structure was, it's just going to get deeper and more interesting as it goes along. And that's really it. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be fun, and maybe it's a little light and kind of superficial at the beginning, and then as the movie goes, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Mm-hmm. And that's the simplest way I could say what the structure is. And mm-hmm. that's kind of like always what I'm interested in. A lot of times, like even your listeners probably just heard like, oh, it's some girl who does domino art. That sounds really, that.
Right.
Okay.
So
I get it.
Right from the start, you'll just you're going to show, examples of this thing. Sure. and how people are, oohing over it, and how,
But as the movie goes, it'll probably start getting into a lot of these sort of bigger thoughts in your mind, whether or not the movie presents them or you just get there yourself, like about art, about patience, about how today, kids don't really have this sense of meticulousness and how that's sort of a lost passion in our world. And, so the big themes kind of present themselves, and I hope audiences can sort of find them. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with the world before your feet. I'm not really trying to give you all this stuff. I have these cool scenes, like we said, about Matt in cemeteries, but the audience has to sort of find what's interesting there. And the big lofty themes, that's their job. It's mm-hmm. It's sort of not my job to show those, mm-hmm. to say those. Mm-hmm. I think they'll get them. Mm.
Again, The World Before Your Feet premieres in New York City on Wednesday, the
November 21st at Quad Cinema.
November 21st at the Quad Cinema.
There'll be 6 showings a day. It'll probably be at Quad for at least, could be 8 days, could be longer. But there'll be several showings a day. We'll be doing Q&A, me, Matt Green, and the producer Jesse Eisenberg. Mm-hmm. And then we're also opening in Los Angeles on November 23rd at the New Art. We will also be multiple theaters a day, multiple screenings a day with me doing Q&A and all that kind of mm-hmm. stuff.
Right.
And then additional cities to come. And we're sort of now positioning that and looking towards 2019 for the rest of the run.
Right. And that's where our listeners come in, because the more people that show up at these screenings and the better it does, of course, the more the distribution company has the confidence to, do even that many more theaters and openings. And
I think your listeners will like it. You have a lot of listeners in New York City. You're sort of known in the New York City world. They'll like it. Right. It's about, in a way, yes, it's about all these big, broad topics, but it's about New York City. Yeah. And I think they'll really enjoy it.
I agree.
So I'd love, and if they come up and say hello, and we'll make fun of Adam's podcasts. They could tell Matt Green to get a job.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, that's not appropriate.
They could tell him to, get a job. You
can't call him lazy.
Yeah, you can't.
That's just does not apply.
You really can't. It's hard to sort of say like, oh, you're a freeloader. Well, he's living off $10 a day. But, he is a guy who is not accomplishing things in the way that most people,
it's not right in the conventional sense of the
But neat guy, and people should really,
and he's funny and he's goofy.
Yeah, he's funny. He's very funny.
Yeah.
And if
you go back to the last, when you were both on, I don't think it was our last episode, but it was the episode we did back in I guess at the end of February or whenever it was.
He's funny.
Yeah.
And that helps. It helps a lot when you have a movie about just this one guy doing this weird thing.
Yeah, sure.
It helps.
The Q&As, I'm sure, have been great. Yeah. No doubt about it. Yeah, and and I'm sure they go on for most of the evening.
Exactly.
Right. All right. Well, this has been great fun.
This has been long. I hope nobody's fallen asleep yet.
No way.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Are you thinking me or the people listening?
People listening. They're
Got
just
it.
like, oh,
Right.
man, not only is this guy walking every street, this guy's
Go
talking
to the
every street.
worldbeforeyourfeet.com, the world, right? And also you can find The World Before on Twitter.
Twitter is Before Your Feet.
I got the wrong part of the sentence.
Instagram
title,
is
rather.
The World Before Your Feet. Facebook, The World Before Your Feet, and then there's the website. But people should check out our trailer, and
Yeah, which we'll play.
Awesome.
Through this a little bit too.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Thank you, Adam.
Of course.